A monstrous storm barreling through Florida, more than 100 losing their lives and thousands still with no place to go. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I'm Sarina Fazan. We are committed to helping those impacted by Hurricane Ian and trying to do our part with our special coverage, Hurricane Ian Rebuilding Florida. In the next hour, you will hear from several organizations taking part in this massive recovery effort and how you can help. Let's begin with the emergency officials on the ground. It gives me great honor to welcome Tampa's first fire chief, Barbara Tripp, into the studio, as well as emergency specialist of St. Petersburg, Megan Orlando. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So we just started and we saw just some of the devastating pictures coming from our state. Chief, let's start with you, your reaction and how serious this storm is.
Well, the storm is very serious, and when we started talking with the National Weather Service, we realized that that was definitely going to be an impact wherever it hit. And because Tampa was in the eye of the storm, we definitely made sure we started preparing in advance, getting the information out to the communities, looking at the evacuations, requesting a lot of different resources to help out the community if the storm was to hit Tampa.
And I know that we are sending help to the affected areas, and we'll get to that in a moment. Speaking of that, Megan, your boss is not here today because where is she right now?
She's in Charlotte County right now, assisting in their Emergency Operations Center, helping to coordinate resources and work with all the different agencies to give relief to the individuals that were preparing and first responding. So acting as that relief and give them some rest so that way they can take care of their family and their friends as well.
You know, Hurricane Ian took so many of us by surprise because here in the Tampa Bay area, we were all anticipating, fearing that the storm would come right toward us. But as we were talking in the show, so oftentimes it shifts. A hurricane can shift. And thankfully, Tampa was spared, but we see our neighbors. So we are talking to the Red Cross as well. But before we get to that, Chief, share with us what you were talking about the cone.
So the National Weather Service, of course, I'm not a meteorologist, but just listening to them and just studying the storm itself, usually they put a cone out. With all the different models, they kind of give you many directions of which way the storm can go. So I've learned over the last few years that anytime that you're in that cone, you should start be preparing, because that's just a sign that that storm, when it come in, that eye can shift anywhere in that storm. So we should always definitely be prepared. If you're in that cone, you should start being prepared.
And Megan, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. The cone of uncertainty is really that. It's uncertain, but somewhere within that cone is where the center of the track is. It doesn't say that's where all the impacts are going to be. So looking at that center line as, okay, this is the guiding light or guide of where it's going to be, but there are going to be impacts hundreds of miles outside of that cone. So understanding your risk and knowing what you should be prepared for is really, really important.
Yes. Well, and speaking of that, I mean, we see Hurricane Ian impacted so much of Florida, but why don't we go to an interview with the Red Cross right now? They are talking directly about the impact to Fort Myers, so why don't we take a listen to that?
This is a disaster. It's a huge disaster. This will be known as one of the biggest disasters we've ever responded to. Last week, I was able to go down and visit the area as we were reconnoitering it and figuring out what we were going to do and how to respond best. The damage in the area is huge. There are swaths of land where you can just see the water came through. And one of the most graphic images was seeing a chain link fence that had little yellow flags on it. And the experienced Red Crosser with me said, that's the sign of insulation that went with water through that fence and got shred. You look at it, you see lots of physical damage. Crumpled up roofs. Like usually there's a roof like this and suddenly you see it's all crumpled up on one end at the end of a home. You'll see roofs that obviously were pulled off. You see boats, places where boats don't belong. You see cars where boats usually belong. There's a little bit of everything. All of that is the stuff. We are grateful for all the people that were able to survive. We are grateful for all the people that listened and evacuated.
They told us that 90% of every dollar goes to help people who are victims of the storm. Looking at pictures like that, I mean, you know, honestly, it gives me pause. My heart aches. But we are blessed again to be here. Yes. But what happens? How do we help them? So, Chief, we'll start with you. You know, it doesn't hit us, but how do we all come together?
So basically, we can help out the local communities in many ways. Of course, we always know about donations, and it can be monetary or whether it be, you know, volunteering. It's definitely, they need a lot of volunteers. The city of Tampa, the police department and fire department, we actually sent personnel down to assist with an area down in southwest Florida, which was Northport. And the personnel assisted the local law enforcement as well as the fire department with responding their calls, allowed the individuals to be able to go home and, you know, secure their assets as well as their families as well. So just volunteering, donating your time as well as donating different items that families may need. A lot of homes are totally destroyed, so they need to start from the bottom and build up again. So I think a lot of the monetary donations would definitely be beneficial for people to be able to get some of the appliances they need, or as well as the structures of their homes.
They keep on saying cash is king, and I see, Megan, you are nodding your head. Your reaction?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, that's not what a lot of people want to hear is, you know, send us money, but truly that is the best way to support, because along with donations come a lot of storage space. You need to figure out who you can give those items to. So organizing that is a whole business in itself, and that's part of the staff that went down to Charlotte County. That's what they're going to be helping with right now, is volunteers and donations management. But truly, money matters in this situation, and giving people the ability to purchase the things that they need. A lot of individuals, we've heard the story being in emergencies for a very long time of people sending sweaters down. Well, it's very hot outside, so unfortunately sweaters aren't going to help people in their day-to-day needs, but getting food on the table and getting clothing that fit them, that makes sure that they feel cared for and that they feel proper and back into a normal kind of operating, yes, a normal sense of life is really important, and monetary donations are the best way to do that.
And you know, that's very comforting, honestly, as you just talked about, Megan, that sometimes people do not want to hear that. But coming from officials and reiterating that message, I think does also offer people comfort that that is the best way to help.
That is the best way.
We talked about 2 evacuations earlier, and the Red Cross spoke of that as well. But I want to go to a video right now of the evacuation process, and I want to talk more about it. If we could take the video.
Emergency services will not be available. Please evacuate now.
Every time I hear anything like that, it does gives me goosebumps, because police, sheriff, fire, emergency management, they do say if you do not evacuate, we cannot be there. Chief, please reiterate the message on why you can't be there. It's not that you don't want to be there,
right,
but you can't be there. Why?
Well, for a couple of reasons. And just to reiterate on the video there, the city of Tampa actually went door to door in South Tampa to make sure that they get the message out, as well as with a lot of social media, to let individuals that are in evacuation zone A and B, you know, you need to depart at ASAP, evacuate. One of the reasons is because when those storms come in, we cannot respond once the sustained wind is at a certain miles per hour. So you're at risk, and you're also putting the first responders at risk. And the point is that we cannot go out there when the winds are above, 40 miles per hour. So that's why we try to get everyone out, because when you wait to the last minute, now you need help, and unfortunately, we cannot come. We can't put our lives in danger as well. So that is one of the reasons why we definitely reiterate that if it's time for you to evacuate, please evacuate. Listen to the local government and the rules and evacuate as soon as you can.
Isn't that something, though, hearing, Megan, you can respond to, that you went door to door?
Yes.
And did you find, or do you both see that a lot of people stay in their homes?
And a lot of people do stay in their homes. And actually, after the storm was over, I had a conversation with someone who lived in South Tampa. And they actually was grateful that it didn't happen, but they said that was a lesson learned. And because they have ruled out many storms before, and they was like, no, it's not going to happen. But actually seeing the devastation down in Southwest Florida made them realize never again. They would never play Russian roulette again with a storm.
It's unfortunate. You don't want to see your residents, your friends, your family in that position. That's why I'm very adamant with my friends and my family of, hey, this is what's happening. You need to take it seriously. If you do evacuate, in worst case scenario, come back to a perfectly working house, that is great. What we don't want to see is people gamble or take a chance and be part of that devastation and have a whole bunch of community members have to come together to pick them up off their feet and assist them in any way possible. So safety is key when officials do make that evacuation order.
Because life is priceless.
Life is definitely priceless. And one thing individuals need to understand, whenever there's a storm, 9 times out of 10, you're going to have power outage. You know, so if you don't have power, if you're on some sort of oxygen, some sort of medical assistance that you need electrical service for, it's going to be hard, you know, so you're still going to be without. So that's why we open up shelters, because at the shelters we provide that electrical power to be able to source whatever medical situations they need to take care of. So electricity is definitely going to go out.
And you know, and it is something like we don't think about that, right? And how much we need electricity. Oh, yeah, you're like, oh, well, I'll just plug this in or I'll heat this up, and then you don't have power and you realize that how can you live without it? I mean, these people, of course, are forced to live without it. And as we talk about that, so many people are doing specials now. It's in, you know, news reports. But even if you look at the national news, Hurricane Ian has become, they'll get to Hurricane Ian. How long is the rebuilding effort here in Florida, and how often do we need to talk about it?
Well, I can say we need to talk about it often so people can understand the importance. When the county start evacuating, you need to evacuate and listen. One of the things, we're still recovering from a lot of other storms that have came through, like Charlie, that a lot of the communities are still not developed yet. So rebuilding Florida, South Florida, is going to take some years to rebuild. And we're talking about years.
Absolutely, years. And that's the scary part. The news is very of the moment and of the time. So once you lose eyes on things like Michael that happened in the Panhandle not too many years ago, communities are still very much rebuilding there. There's still a lot of communities that do not have a sense of normalcy. And unfortunately, that's what's going to be happening in Southwest Florida. But also something that takes years is preparedness and getting your community in the right state of mind to be able to handle these situations. Much like City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, City of St. Petersburg, it's taken years to get us to the point of preparedness and communications and understanding what each community needs. So a lot of these components of emergencies or storms in particular take years to build up and for years for people to understand how to prepare or what to do.
It's so true. You have to rebuild the community. I mean, I remember I was in Punta Gorda when Charlie hit. Years later, they're still rebuilding.
Still rebuilding.
So when we talk about preparedness, we have a hurricane season, which is 6 months long.
Yes.
But when do we really begin preparing, and what are the key items that we need to prepare for? Is it, like the paperwork in place, or you both share? What are the best ways to prepare ahead of time?
Well, some of the things you can prepare, definitely important paperwork. You want to make sure it's secured in a nice safe. You have to be cautious if you have a safe at home, and just think about how strong the storm will be, because if it actually can float away the car, it probably can float away the safe as well. So you might want to put it in a much more secure place, important papers and documents and stuff. When hurricane season starts in June 1st, we need to make sure we start preparing, replacing old batteries. If we got a generator, we should be starting our generators often, and make sure that we identify all of the safety hazards associated with generators. A lot of times people want to put in their homes, which they shouldn't put in their homes, but then you have to think about the gasoline and how long it's going to run. So it's just a lot of different preparedness out there that individuals can do. And I know we put a lot of social media information out there, flyers and stuff, and so people need to read up on that. And also make sure you have like a point of contact. Make sure you have family members to be able to get in touch with one another. Have someone out of state that you can, contact, or they can contact you, friends, neighbors, and just get involved with the community.
Wonderful.
Some of the steps that we like to preach about is, get prepared, know your risk, get involved, all of these things. Making a plan could take months to get your family ready. And that's why you start outside of hurricane season, so that way you're not caught off guard. I believe this was the first year, but 6 years prior to that, every single year we had a developing tropical something before June 1st. And so it was always really scary getting into May of, okay, I know June 1st is the day, but it really could happen before, and it could happen a little bit after too. So taking this off season and starting to build your hurricane kit, maybe even one item at a time. In my household, I have a 2-week rotation of foods and goods of, all right, this is my hurricane kit, but I'll go through it for 2 weeks and then replenish it, so it's not just a stale kit sitting there. So all throughout the year, you don't know what hazard that you're going to get into or what emergency you might incur, but certainly taking it in the off season, seeing our lessons learned of what could have been us. 70 miles separates a couple down trees to total devastation. So seeing what that was, understanding your risk, and moving forward right now would be fantastic.
Especially with medical conditions as well. So individuals that do have medical problems and stuff, you definitely need to prepare in advance, be able to go to those special needs shelters where you can have that medical assistance that you need. So
To help. And so there, or to be prepared.
Yes.
Speaking of preparedness, and I appreciate you talked about cash being king, and we should, be donating as much as we can. We are working with many organizations, and we're trying to help so many local organizations as well. So as people try to choose an organization to help, what should they look for? And does it really matter? Like, should you be helping the Red Cross, or should you reach out to Metropolitan Ministries, the Crisis Center? We're fortunate to have both of those CEOs coming into the studio today too. Do you have any advice on that, Chief?
Well, you definitely want to invest in some organization that's credible. Metropolitan Ministries as well as the American Red Cross are two credible agencies that you can assist.
So speaking of that, so we have Raphael Perrier here in the studio as well as a representative of the Merciful Project that actually went down to Fort Myers and rescued animals. From an emergency official standpoint, of course, we want to help people down there, but would you advise going down to help? And if so, is there a right time to go?
Well, you have to be cautious of when you go. You have to make sure you have the right connection. Sometimes people are going down there to help, and of course they're coming out and becoming, I don't want to use the word a problem, but looters and stuff. So you just have to make sure you have a good organization, make sure it's a credible organization to be able to volunteer your time.
Yeah, get in touch with credible agencies before you go down. If we want to talk about preparedness, getting in touch with volunteer agencies before a storm hits or before hurricane season is really what we want to gear towards. So getting in touch with your community emergency response team, getting in touch with American Red Cross, Habitat for Humanity. There's a lot of different agencies that you can get involved with before, so that way when something happens, you're credentialed and ready to go and have a team and a support system.
That is such great advice. So Megan, from an emergency standpoint, what is the best way to find those organizations? Would you say through social media, through
social
website?
media? You can go to, I know Pinellas County Emergency Management, they have a whole list of agencies. If you call the Red Cross and say, hey, this is what I'm looking to get involved with, they'll be able to connect you with different agencies as well. Reach St. Pete is a great one. There's different food pantries that you can get involved with, and a lot of times if you're a volunteer for one agency, you know a lot of the other agencies that show up at the table as well.
And as well with the City of Tampa, of course, the Tampa Gov website has a lot of information about volunteering. We also have a CERT program, which is the Community Emergency Response Team as well. And we put on events every week, every 8 weeks, and that's a good organization to be a part of.
Well, we so appreciate the two of you being here and helping spread this message of help and recovery. Well, coming up, the different sides of recovery, from the essentials to keep people going, like food, but also the much needed mental help as people try to get their lives back on track. Coming up next, Clara Reynolds, the CEO of the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay, and Tim Marks, the CEO of Metropolitan Ministries. But first, here is more information on the Red Cross and how you can help. You are watching special coverage, Hurricane Ian rebuilding Florida. There are many different sides of recovery, from the basics to food and mental health. Joining us now, Tim Marks, the CEO of Metropolitan Ministries, and Clara Reynolds, the CEO of the Crisis Center Tampa Bay. Thank you both so much for being here and joining us in this special.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. And just moments ago, we heard from Fire Chief Barbara Tripp and Megan Orlando with St. Pete Emergency Management. You both were in the control room watching their interview. Clara, you were saying to me you were actually with Barbara Tripp.
So I had staff in the emergency operations centers helping in some of those evacuations, and it's incredible how the team comes together, particularly in the EOC. It's not just government, it's also nonprofits, it's for-profits, everybody coming together because there's just so much to be done during any kind of natural disaster.
And Tim, you were saying, like, thankfully, right, our area was spared for the most part the wrath of Hurricane Ian. But that's when our volunteers, look, it gives me goosebumps, need to jump into action more than ever. So describe the scene at Metropolitan Ministries.
You know, we say nothing good happens at Metropolitan Ministries without the community support, and the community showed up before the storm, even during the storm and after the storm. And that Friday, once we got the all clear, we had 220 volunteers on our campus working multiple shifts, cooking food, and over 60,000 meals came out of our kitchen through our partnership with World Central Kitchen. But without volunteers, it couldn't have gotten done the way it was able to be accomplished. But also, more importantly, we had volunteers volunteering 6 hours preparing food, and then on Friday they needed to get the food down to Fort Myers, and it created some logistical challenges. And I had some volunteers that had worked 6 hours making food, and they were actually a coach from Berkeley Prep on the baseball team, got the van from the school, got permission to fill that van. We filled that van up with 9 Cambros of food that went down to Punta Gorda. And that was the only food that was able to get down there. And it came out of our kitchen here in Tampa, but was delivered because of volunteers. And I checked on the volunteer team. I said, how did you guys do? Are you back? This was at 10 o'clock at night. I got a text back at 2 in the morning. They got caught up with the flooding on I-75 on Friday night, but still made the journey, got that food delivered. That food was there to serve people, and then they came back, but they did a full day's worth of volunteering, and they made a difference. And over again, there's stories of folks making a difference. I have here a little package. This is from Parker Smith, and she knew one of our employees was working at Metro, and she wanted to make a difference, and so she went around her neighborhood and collected $59. It's all, it shakes, right? But it's just what kids could give. You know, she went to children and her friends, and they raised this money, and this money will go to help support families in need and our neighbors to the south.
So I have so many comments after this conversation, and many key points. One, when Barbara Tripp also mentioned 9 out of 10 people, oftentimes than not, lose power. And when you lose power, you know, you lose food. But also the volunteer effort, what Megan talked about, saying that you need to choose an organization, or it's great to choose an organization prior to a storm hitting, so when the storm hits, you're ready to go.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, Tim, it was such a beautiful thing that you just shared with your volunteers. In our situation, our volunteers are dealing in sexual assaults that happened during the storm, and so we need to get victims in. We're helping travelers be able to navigate their airlines because we have volunteers at Travelers Aid. So we have very specific volunteers, and obviously they've got a lot of work that they need to do specific to their job. So I would certainly encourage anybody, you know, if you are looking to volunteer in a different way, certainly any of our nonprofits would love to have kind of this disaster volunteer who could come forward and help during these times of unusual need.
Clara, the fact, though, dealing with sexual assaults people are already dealing with so much devastation. Can you just talk about, honestly, it's very upsetting that there's so much going on already. So with the Crisis Center, share more with what the Crisis Center is doing.
Yeah, so during the storm, we answer the calls in Charlotte County. And so we would take maybe 200 to 300 calls a week from individuals in Charlotte County. And within 2 days of the storm, we were taking 1,700 calls.
1,700 calls?
1,700 calls we fielded in the first 2 or 3 days. And it was for many individuals, elderly, individuals who had no way of evacuating, so they were calling us just as a lifeline, just to make sure that somebody knew where they were and what was going on. So there was a lot of that during the storm. As we talked about before, we were helping to evacuate people. The medically complex, as Chief Tripp talked about, those individuals must go to shelter because of their need for electricity and complex medical, so we were helping to do all that. But in addition, there was the other pieces that we do, and that certainly is around sexual assault, because we are, if you're assaulted in Hillsborough County, you physically come to our location. And we had many people right after the storm that unfortunately needed our help and support. So, again, we all hope that during a crisis, everybody shows up like they did at Metro Ministries and do the wonderful things. But we also know that there's always not the bright side of these disasters.
Yeah, I'll just add, our outreach center and prevention center opened up Friday morning, and we knew there'd be a line waiting for people to come looking for help. And they were there, and unfortunately, one of the first women in line came for food, but then she confided with the counselor that she was sexually assaulted during the storm.
Yeah,
and we had to call TPD to make a report, but it is something that happens. We care for about 150 homeless families. About 90% of the women have been abandoned, but 80% of the women and families have witnessed some type of domestic violence in their lifetime or recently, and that's one of the reasons why we're sheltering and caring for families. So during the storm, we had to care for close to 300 families in our affordable housing development as well in our shelter systems, but we needed to be ready, just like you were ready at the front door, whether it's answering the call or at our front door, for folks that are in crisis looking for help, all experiencing different forms of trauma, looking for some sense of hope in what might feel to them a hopeless situation.
Well, speaking of hope, as you shared this, can you hold that up one more time?
Yeah, I love it.
Awesome.
I think that's so wonderful.
Southampton, Silverdale neighborhood, Silverdale kids
Nice.
for Southwest Florida kids thinking about kids.
That is, I mean, talk about heartfelt. I want to
heck
share. I want to share at this point a soundbite or an interview with the Red Cross that they also shared about some of the more positive things that we're also seeing. So why don't we go to that soundbite?
There were so many uplifting moments. We have seen whole neighborhoods come together, share meals, where one person might have power and the other doesn't. They plug into each other's power for a couple of hours so that their home their refrigerator might get cooled down a little bit, or else they'll say, come over to my house, I have hot showers and working toilets, come on over, and they're doing that.
And that's Ella Landegger, and I have to tell you, bless her heart, she is on her way to do an interview with us, and she got into a car accident.
Oh, no.
Thank God she's okay, the other person is okay, but she still made it before heading down to Fort Myers to do an interview, so we certainly thank her and every member of the Red Cross, and we thank the two of you for being here today. So when you hear stories like that, neighbors coming together, people helping each other. Right now is the time that we really, and we hear it all the time, but we really do need to come together as a community.
Oh, absolutely. We need to come together for the basic needs, as Tim mentioned, but you also need to come together just for the emotional support. I mean, this impacted all of us in one way or the other, and that impact, truly impacts how you perceive the world, how you feel, your emotional health. And so being able to, share a meal, but also share stories about, how you were feeling leading up to it, and also how you were feeling post, because there's many people that are having this sense of survivor's guilt because it didn't hit here in the Tampa Bay area. And so to be able to share those stories and really talk through all of those feelings and emotions are so very important right now.
And I'll just add, that we heard in the first segment about this idea that this will be an elongated impact to our community. And we truly believe that. When Katrina hit, we had people from New Orleans coming to Tampa to start over a new life. We expect that that's to happen too, that many of those that experienced tremendous loss and trauma are going to need to rebuild their lives. Think about those folks that are paycheck to paycheck that worked in the hospitality industry. There is no hospitality industry in Fort Myers right now? Where do those workers work that worked in the hotels or in the restaurants or along the beach in the small little small businesses? They have to start over. They need some sense of income. And so, yeah, they're in shelter now, or they have some unemployment benefits, but they want to rebuild their lives. And I think that Tampa is going to be part of that. And there are going to be so many challenges. We were already pressed in this economy through rising rental rates and rising food costs. Now take that on top of the fact that it's hard to even get a hotel room in the area right now, because there's so many folks that have been displaced. We do a hotel motel voucher program because there's so many folks that are just now recently homeless. They never thought they'd be homeless. Our motel voucher program, in 1 week, we spent everything that we thought we would normally spend in a month in providing
And it's
vouchers.
gone in a week.
Yeah.
Just in 1 week. And it's only going to get worse and more of a challenge to find affordable places to put people up and stabilize them and try to develop a plan, as well as our rising rental properties are going to all be at close to 100% capacity, and the rates will continue to rise. So again, folks that are paycheck to paycheck are really going to be struggling for a long period of time to try to come out of this crisis. And we're going to see more and more, not just recently homeless, but homeless for an elongated period of time.
And if I may, I think that the other piece that goes hand in hand with it is the emotional toll that
Yeah.
we just both talked about. You know, we've seen this behavioral health tsunami, and I hate to use the word tsunami after a hurricane, but
Right, but-
you know,
but
it
yes.
really, it truly with COVID, and I think this is going to be the next phase. You know, for us, because we answer the National Suicide Prevention Helpline, that week of September 26th, you know, we were taking about 20 or 30 calls a day. On Friday, September 30th, we took 105 suicide calls. That was
105
suicide calls just in Hillsborough County. And so that tells me that we have got a long way to go before people are going to feel emotionally healthy again. So, you know, thank you so much, Tim, for what you're doing on the basic needs side. But you and I and all of us are really going to have to work together, because we've got to surround folks. You know, they need their basic needs, absolutely. But once those stabilize, those emotional factors are going to continue moving forward. So, you know, the camaraderie that we can find, any of those things that we can do. Talking is one of the most important things, though, that we've got to do with one another as we process what has happened.
Well, you both bring up a very, very good point. And I remember covering Katrina as well. And I lived in New Orleans, not when Katrina hit, but here, that so many people, even though thankfully we did not here in the Bay Area see, again, the wrath of Hurricane Ian, we do need to prepare. And you just bring up a great point that already this community is strained. Of course, our hearts, go out to those in Southwest Florida and the areas that need to rebuild. But you just look at those devastating pictures, and then you look at our pictures here, but there's a lot to rebuild in the entire state.
Oh, absolutely. You know, and you look to our neighbors just in southern Hillsborough, Manatee, Sarasota, all right down from us, all of those individuals, to Tim's point, are all going to need our support. And it's going to have to come from those of us here in the northern portion of our region, you know, Pinellas, Hillsborough, Pasco, to provide that help and support.
And you both mentioned this issue of collaboration. I think that it was strong before the storm, during the storm, and now it's going to be even stronger after the storm. We recently just got a delivery from Feed the Children, a national organization, dropping off food box at our warehouse. We're now going to then take them from our warehouse to a food bank down at Fort Myers. And it's this idea of leveraging, like during the storm, we leveraged our kitchen with World Central Kitchen to cook all these meals. Now we're going to leverage our warehouse as a staging area so that when supplies come into the state, we can take them and then move them down. It's what I usually say is, I know there's a need in a community, but those that live in the community know the need by name. And so those agencies that are in Fort Myers and in Southwest Florida that have been directly impacted, they know the need by name. And our role will be to help support those agencies, as well as individuals that come up to us and need our help, but also then continue to help those agencies that are indigenous in those communities so that they can do the best they can to meet the need.
You know, you bring up such a beautiful point with that, Tim, too, because, you know, we talk about, you know, people experiencing the survivor guilt and what they can do, you know, being able to donate to organizations like yours, being able to provide, you know, local volunteer efforts, all of those things, again, are going to go such a long way in helping with our mental health and getting us beyond, you know, this initial trauma.
So let me ask you, speaking of that, and Tim, I want to, but also ask, so let me start with you, Tim, first. We heard earlier in the first part of the show about how cash is king and people should donate cash. But from the Metropolitan Ministries standpoint, and from people who are watching, would you encourage people to bring food? Canned food or?
Yeah, if it's non-perishables, absolutely. Again, it's going to be elongated impact, and everybody has different capabilities. Again, if they all can do what they do, all be pieces of the puzzle, we can get this done. So maybe you can't financially give, but you can volunteer your time. Maybe you have some additional items in your pantry that you could donate. Donate those to Metro or any other food bank in your community. Same thing then goes with financial. Obviously, if you can make a financial gift that gives the greatest amount of flexibility, again, for the long run, which I do believe this will be a long run intervention.
So maybe businesses like our business here, you know, at Red House Streaming, maybe we put together, we keep a box, you know, here, and people can just drop, you know, canned items, and then, you know, as a team, we can bring those in.
But it's all the other stuff too.
Right.
It's the diapers.
Yes,
it is,
talk about that,
It's
please.
the cleaning supplies. It is all of those things that you need as well, because again, hygiene kits, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Because again, when you've got nothing, sometimes what is therapeutic isn't therapy. It is being able to take a hot shower with a bottle of soap. I mean, so those things are equally as important. And again, it doesn't take much. You know, if you're a traveler, you've got all of those little toiletry, you know, mini bottles. Just go and bring them somewhere, donate them somewhere. It can go such a long way. And again, to Tim's point, the folks down there, they know what they need. And so when it does come to cash, many of them know what they need. And oftentimes it is things that just require cash to make happen.
Absolutely. Speaking of cash, and before we wrap up this segment, I do want to ask you though, Clara, like at this time, a lot of people our mind needs to be in a good state, because how are we going to take care of our kids? How are we going to take care of our parents? A lot of people wonder, all right, we have to pay our rent, we have to buy food, you know, we're trying to help. Is there financial help out there? Or is there help out there where you don't have to pay for it? Is there mental help?
Absolutely. There's loads of help available. You know, and again, Tim can talk about, you know, the basic needs on the mental health side. I would recommend anyone who's struggling, first of all, you know, thank you for admitting that you're struggling. Don't face this alone. There's no issue too big or too small, and it's very simple. You can call 211. Doesn't matter where you are in the state, you can call 211 and get connected to those resources that are free, low cost, no cost. They are available, and don't put it off. Don't think that your issue is too little because of everything else that's happening down in South Florida. Your issue is just as important, and please, it's so important right now to make sure you're taking care of yourself so that then you can take care of others.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For so many, just to know that somebody cares for them brings them hope. We helped a lady many, many years ago, and I thought we gave her food, and she said no, we gave her hope, because it reminded her that somebody cared for her. And that's what so many of your call answers do for folks, is remind that they are loved and they're cared for.
Because that's the building block of everything, right? Is hope.
Is hope. Well, thank you so much to the both of you being here and sharing your message as we all work together, rebuilding Florida. Coming up next, the inspiring stories of hope, what we just heard about from Tim and Clara, and the triumphs, even in the midst of devastating hardship. Joining us in the studio, Heidi Acuna, the founder of Merciful Project, Kahwa Coffee owner Raphael Perrier, and his very special friend here, the former St. Pete Mayor, Rick Kreisman, all joining us. But in the meantime, here's some information on both of these organizations, the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay, right there, 211. Remember that number, and also Metropolitan Ministries. Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back. Hurricane Ian brought devastating destruction. loss of life, and billions of damage. But during these toughest times, there's also a test of the human spirit, the inspiring stories of hope and the triumph, even in the midst of devastating hardship. Joining us in the studio now to talk about this, we have Heidi Acuna, the founder of the Merciful Project, Kahwa Coffee owner Raphael Perrier, and a very, very special friend to the network, former Mayor Rick Kreisman. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be with you.
Thank you. As we try to help spread this message of recovery and rebuilding Florida. Heidi, let's start with you. Talk about your organization and what you do.
So Merciful Project is a nonprofit organization that started in October 2019. We always focus our efforts on the animal rescue, helping the community and helping the environment. So if you ask me when Hurricane Ian was about to hit us directly, it was in my heart to help however I could. So we started by collecting supplies and doing a couple, like we're on our third trip to down the areas that were affected. So that also combines the three things that we do and what we know how to do best, which is helping the community, the animals, and the environment.
I want to talk to you more about the trip and the animals that you have helped. But speaking of going down to help, Raphael, you just recently returned from Fort Myers. Can you describe what you saw and why it was so important for you to be there?
It was pretty devastating. It was impressive. You don't realize until you're there how bad, the area got affected. It was very important for us. A bunch of us actually went down, 13 cars total. We took one of the vans for Kahwa and brought down, water, food, diapers, anything that you can think of that people need. It was pretty impressive to be down there.
And I have to say, I asked you, I said, Raphael, do you have any pictures that you can share with us? And you said, no, not really. I only took a couple because it felt uncomfortable, right? Like seeing all this devastation.
I mean, you feel bad to take pictures of people's devastation. That's their living. That's what they used to. That's what they used to have, and taking a picture of it just doesn't feel right, or a movie, or it just doesn't fit well.
So, Mayor, as you listen to these stories, and you led a community, you're still a leader. What is your reaction?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, for all of us in the Tampa Bay area, I mean, you don't wish a storm to turn on any other community, but how fortunate we were. And, you hope every time there is a storm, especially if you're not directly impacted, that you learn a little something from it. We always used to, after every storm, take a look at how we did our business as a city government and look for ways of doing it better. But this one's got to be a wake-up call. If the storms in the past weren't, this one has to be a wake-up call. If you're in a zone A, B, or C, and you're not thinking about evacuating, you sure need to be thinking about it, because the devastation that this storm has done and the years it's going to take to recover from it, and the impacts, and your guests talked about the mental health impacts, the physical impacts, they're going to go and they're going to last for a long time. And the better prepared you are, and the more ready you are to react when a storm is coming, the better off you're going to be. So my hope is that we've learned as a community that we've got to take these things seriously. They're going to happen more frequently and more significant and severe.
So from that standpoint as well, the small businesses, small businesses that are growing, congratulations, these missions that you are finding, how important is that?
It's critical. I mean, the reality is, as much as government wants to do, it cannot do it alone. And that's the beauty of what you're seeing, and that's always been the way it's been here in the Tampa Bay area. Businesses like Kahwa Coffee and they've come together and tried to lift people up when they're suffering. And that's what's needed. And, it really shows that, when we start doubting humanity because of all the noise that's out in politics, this is when you see humanity really step up, and you see a community step up. And, like I said, it's great the government comes in, but I think in some ways it's even more meaningful to those who are suffering when they see their residents and people that they know, or businesses that have come in and said, we care about you, even when we're not from your area. We care about you. We want to make a difference and try and help you. And it's huge.
And speaking of help, Haiti, let's go to you. So oftentimes too, of course, our families, our children, or, our loved ones are so important, but it is also our furry friends that are members of the family.
Yes.
So talk to us about that rescue. How many animals have you rescued, and share why? I know you talked about it, why it was so important, but delve into that.
So if you ask me overall how many animals we rescue in this organization, with all my volunteers, with all the help, we rescue almost 2,000 animals overall, right? So you can see the amount of work that we put into this. And as you mentioned, it's not just about helping our little circle. We go above and beyond of that. We rescue after like in the states like Georgia, Alabama, and all that. But this specific case of Hurricane Ian and what we're talking about today is going down to those areas that didn't ask for our help. I didn't receive any calls saying, Haiti, you're with Merciful Project, you know a lot of hurricane relief, you've done this before, come and help us. Nobody did that. I knew that was my responsibility in society. I'm a big believer that in life you have to have a purpose, and that's what Merciful Project is here for. And the way that I run the organization is that everybody knows that this is a big purpose in our lives. So Hurricane Ian just happened, and I just started, contacting different organizations, shelters down there that unfortunately got hit hard. And we actually thought that it was going to be us. We were right in the middle of Hyde Park. We had to evacuate. And I thought I was going to come back to nothing, to lose everything of what we have in our animal rescue. So, and also educating the community, right? Because people often tend to plan, okay, I'm going to evacuate, but we also see those situations that people evacuate and leave their animals behind. And that's very, very, very hard to see, and that happened right before the hurricane hit. I was getting phone calls about owners dumping their animals or leaving them behind. There are some businesses, obviously I cannot say the names of these businesses, leaving the animals in the backyards because they had to go and they didn't have a plan for their pets. So as you said, and thank you for saying this, it's a wake-up call. If you have a plan for your family, you have to have a plan for your pets. If you have 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, please make sure that you have a plan for them as well.
So where are the animals that you have rescued? Where are they going right now?
So the animals that we rescue from the Port Charlotte area, they're in our facility. Some of them are our facility and some of them are in foster homes. So we're a foster home based animal rescue. Is basically all the animals that we rescue going to these amazing temporary homes that help them heal back to health, learn about their personalities, and get them ready to get adopted. And the other animals that I rescue from Pine Island, they are actually in this amazing business. They open the doors for them in a boarding facility, Bay Paws in Ybor City, and they're just waiting for their owners to get back in their feet. So it's a variety of the animals that we're bringing. But all the animals I'm bringing, I'm looking for foster homes for them.
Gentlemen, hearing what Haiti was talking about and as we prepare, it's sad to hear that people do leave behind the animals, their pets.
Yeah, so that's why it's a wake-up call. You need to be prepared. Have your animals up to date on vaccines. Have your animals records printed out the same way that you're putting, ready to eat food. Have food prepared for them as well. Cans of food, little Ziploc bags of food for them. Have carriers ready. So if we prepare, we would not be facing what we're facing right now.
And so, Raphael, you not only went down to the devastated area, you also made a huge decision. And humility aside here, we're talking about helping the community. Talk to us about that huge decision you made and what you did with all of your coffee shops.
So we last Thursday we decided to donate all the sales to the World Central Kitchen, who is an organization who takes care of making meals and saving people, and just giving basic things to people in emergency situations. So we raised a lot of money, and we actually had the biggest day we ever had in the history of the company, and we're donating the whole proceeds to the World Central Kitchen. So it's been a wake-up call, like you said. it's something that you say you need to do something. I think we all need to do something in the community. It didn't hit us right here, but it's very close. You know, it's an hour away, an hour and a half away from us, and it's something that we all need to hopefully help if we can.
Isn't it something, Mayor, to hear this too? All right, we have a nonprofit here, which we are so thankful, and we hear of nonprofits always giving. But here, Kahwa Coffee is a for-profit company.
Yep.
So to hear like 100% of proceeds and the biggest day that they've ever had with people coming forward, your reaction?
Well, truthfully, I'm not surprised because I've known Raphael for a long time, and I know what a great community partner he's been since the day they opened. So on the one hand, I'm not shocked to hear that. On the other hand, you know, I mean, what can you say? That's the kind of thing that lifts you up. That, you know, when you hear about businesses and people like him and his wife who care so much about the community that they say, yeah, we've been blessed and we want to do something to make a difference. And so they do it in multiple ways. I mean, he was down there, they've given money. I mean, that's what lifts the community up. And that's what truly does make a difference. And, you know, I've always felt like businesses that are successful, they should be giving back as a way of saying, hey, we recognize how fortunate we've been, but the reality is not all of them do it. And so, you know, when you have companies and that do it, I think we need to recognize them and thank them and celebrate them.
You know, we are, like here at Red House Streaming, RHS TV, we really are trying to do our part by this hurricane special, by sharing the message, and we so appreciate everybody's time. Everybody is talking about this now. How do we keep it going? Because Mayor, you even said we're talking about years. Every single person who has been a special guest on the show has said this is going to be in our lives for a while. So how do we keep it going?
We just keep sharing it. You know, don't let it die in our social media platforms. You guys are obviously doing your part, sharing it in this, you know, amazing channel. But just keep talking about it to your neighbors, to your family members. Keep saying there's still people, there's still families that lost everything, and it's going to take them years and years to recover. For example, and just not to go so long, I got a call of a lady that they lost everything. They don't even have a car, they don't have a house, and they're staying in a hotel. And she calls me and says, anyone can just help us, please. Oh. So, and that we're gonna continue to see as time goes by, it's more and more and more like lives, things. The good thing is the materialistic things, we can replace them. Yep. But the losses that we, like the animals, the lives, all that is just heartbreaking. And I hope people don't just forget it.
And to continue to share.
Continue to share and continue to help.
What would you say, Raphael, too?
I think we need to keep on raising money. You know, I think it's one of the essential key of getting back on their feet is having the means to be able to survive, having the means to be able to rebuild, get another place, try to, you know, we saw people down there that lost everything. And we, I think, are lucky in some degrees that if anything happens here, we are okay. Some people are not okay. You know, they don't have anything left. Like, you know, we're talking about donating 1 day of sales. It looks great. It's, you know, wonderful. But when you realize that people have lost everything, we could have lost everything. So 1 day is really not much compared to, you know, what happened to people.
Mm-hmm. Well, but anything. I mean, honestly, both of you give so much. And Mayor, I wanted to talk to you about this earlier on the show too. We, you know, heard from emergency management, St. Pete Emergency Management that you headed, right? Emergency management that said cash is king. Sometimes when people hear that, honestly, they get a little uncomfortable, right? Why do you feel cash is so important, especially during a hurricane?
Well, I mean, look, most everyone loses power. And so the ability to use a credit card, for example, kind of goes away. And so if you don't have cash to pay for things, it makes it difficult, if there is the ability to make a transaction, to even have that transaction. And so, you know, I think one of the lessons that I think it's important for all of us to remember is hurricanes are unique from the standpoint that we have time to prepare. You don't have time with a tornado. You don't have time with a fire often. You know, those emergencies happen instantaneously. With a hurricane, we know the season for us, it's soon to be a year away, thankfully. Mm-hmm. And so we'll have that whole year to do something, to get ready so that We have a plan for what are we going to do with our pets. We have a plan to make sure that we have cash that is set aside, that we put important documents or family heirlooms aside. Because if you have a fire, you have a tornado, you're reacting like that, and those things are often gone. And so if we don't take advantage of the time that we have to do the proper planning and put packages together of what's important, shame on us. We really have to use that time well. And we also have to remember we have short memories in this country, and things tend to, within a day or two, it seems like they're gone and we forget about them. And so, as both of you were saying, we have to remind ourselves and talk about and continue to use social media and other avenues to remind people, hey, people are still suffering. And while we may not see a story on the news, that doesn't mean people aren't suffering.
And well, do you both have plans on going back to some of the hard-hit areas soon? Talk to us about those plans.
So on Wednesday, we're going to the Mayaca area because we've been focusing our efforts in the Port Charlotte and Pine Island areas. So as I was telling you earlier, that family contacted me, and there's actually 2 hotels that have over 100 families each that were affected in those flooding zones. So that's where we're going to take all the supplies that we've been collecting. So we continuously ask for donations to those that follow us on social media, those supporters, those small businesses that are around us and support our causes too, to take those supplies to them. And I'm pretty sure after this trip, more things are going to start to happen, because we've done 3 trips, and every time we come back is more and more and more and more.
So you see many more in your future.
Yes, many more.
And Raphael, how about you and your group?
We're thinking about focusing a little bit on the wholesale partners that we have down there. We have a lot of coffee shops, hotels, restaurants that have been affected. So, looking, and now that things are, I wouldn't say coming down, but people are able to assess exactly what's going on. Try to help those people that are our partners in business, to try to see how they can get back on their feet, how we can help. They are donating a lot down there as well, so you see if we can help them as well to donate as much as they can.
It was an interesting point too, businesses that you bring up, Raphael and Mayor, what Tim Marks talked about. Even though we were not directly affected here, to perhaps, right, Haiti too, prepare for an influx of people. We already have a huge influx of more people moving to our area.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, we have to expect that that's going to happen, and so we need to be prepared for that.
I think we should welcome them. It's we have a lot of work available in a lot of areas. So unfortunately for them, fortunately for us, I think the workforce can be used here, and if we can help. Accommodate schedules, make it maybe easier for them to work here the week and go back on the weekend, things like that. I think that we should all try to do something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No,
you say
and
something?
when you're saying the influx, we've seen it from my perspective on the animal rescue part, is the amount of animals that are coming up to Hillsborough County, Pasco County, Pinellas County, when our shelters and our resources are already very limited. But we have to help. I mean, there is no other way. We have to do it, and as you said earlier, this is bringing the best in humanity. So I'm glad so many places, so many businesses are willing to help us much.
It truly is. I mean, it's so devastating, and again, we talk about the billions of dollars in damage, the loss of life that you cannot replace. But to see people come together, the human spirit, and if anything, that does give us hope for the future.
Yep. It does.
We so appreciate you being here so much. Mayor Rick Kreisman, owner of Kahwa Coffee, Raphael Perrier, and Haiti Acuna, meeting you for the first time, the Merciful Project.
Thank you. So nice to meet you.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. Coming up, we do have one final message from the Red Cross, but before we get to that, we do want to share the websites. If you want more information on the Merciful Project, you can head to their website and learn more about them, and also about Kahwa Coffee and all their community effort that they do year-round. Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Please join our effort by sharing this special coverage with others and spreading the message of how to help, so we can get people back into their homes, reopen businesses, and create a stronger and better tomorrow. To learn more about the organizations that are on the front line rebuilding Florida, just head to redhousestreaming.com/Hurricane Ian. I'm Sarina Fazan, and you have been watching Hurricane Ian Rebuilding Florida. We wrap up this hour with one last plea from Ella Landager with the Red Cross. Stay safe.
Right now, everyone is coming back, looking at their homes, and it's devastating. Everything you ever worked for is gone, or it's saturated and is not salvageable. These losses are enormous. You see people who are in their 80s, 90s come and look at their home and turn around and walk away. We try to comfort and care for them, and it is extraordinary. It is absolutely extraordinary to see the resilience of humans and the care and the compassion people show each other. It is profoundly moving. The losses are huge. The effects will be forever. Please help. Thank you.